Talking about Leviticus and Numbers, the place where, as a colleague of mine, Dr. Kirsten says, the place where read through the Bible and the year plans go to die. These two books are often overlooked, often skipped, often looked at almost as outsiders to the rest of Bible study, maybe as an artifact to be looked at and be fascinated by, but certainly nothing to learn from them. Nothing, of course, as we saw last week, could be further from the truth. Leviticus and Numbers play an essential role not only in the Pentateuch, but in the theology of the entire biblical text. They teach us some essential truths that we must need, and if we miss them, we're going to miss important theology that the Bible is trying to teach us. Leviticus specifically is important because of the issue of holiness. We're told in the New Testament that holiness is a big deal, and of course the New Testament quotes Leviticus when it says that. Even Jesus quotes Leviticus when he talks about the second commandment, love your neighbor as yourself, which seems to be a part of holiness. So Leviticus is important because it teaches us about holiness. And what does it teach us about holiness? It teaches us that holiness is a whole life experience, is a whole life issue. We can't compartmentalize our lives between the holy and the profane. That every aspect of our life falls within the scope of affecting holiness. That's what we see in Leviticus. We see that the people with God in their midst had to be holy, and that holiness entailed where they went to the bathroom and how they went to the bathroom, who they had sex with, who they didn't have sex with, what they did every day, what they ate, what they wore, things like that. Every aspect of a person's life is taken up in the pursuit of holiness. There's not a, well, this is my holy life and then I have my unholy life, and the idea that I go to church one day and then the rest. No, holiness entails everything. And before we are too quick to dismiss the issue of holiness and say, well, it doesn't matter what we eat anymore, it doesn't matter what we wear anymore, we should stop and realize that, okay, what we eat does matter. Paul says that if by eating meat we cause our brothers to stumble, then we should stop eating meat altogether. So we find, even in the New Testament, this issue of holiness does still come up. Who we have relations with, what we eat, if what we eat causes our brother to stumble, even what we wear, that we should dress modestly. These are issues that are taken up with the question of holiness, and it's something we can't ignore. So when we look at Leviticus, we can find principles underneath these that tell us what it means to be holy, and it opens up the book of Leviticus for us more than just learning about the sacrifices, but learning about how we should live. Of course, the holiness laws don't necessarily apply the letter of them, but the Spirit certainly does, and we should be very mindful of them. Remember, Jesus quotes Leviticus and says, when he's talking about the second greatest commandment, love your neighbor as yourself. That is a Levitical command, and certainly it affects us today in the church. Looking at Numbers, and of course Numbers is there. It is, as you guys, I love this is one of my favorite discussions. Topics, which title is more appropriate, as most of you pointed out. The numbers play a major role, but the wilderness plays a major role too. The numbers come at the beginning and the end of the book. They're kind of like pillars at the end. The first one, let me do this one because of where the video is. The first one is the first generation, and of course the first generation fails. They're to go into the land and they chicken out, so they're punished, and then they're in the wilderness until they die out. And so the book ends with more genealogies, the numbers, to remind us that there is now another generation. And the question is, will this generation make the same mistake that this generation makes, or will they learn from the mistakes and move on and actually go into the land? And that's what Numbers is about. And of course, if you read, for instance, Hebrews, and even Jesus' temptation in the wilderness, these are things that the New Testament picks up on and assumes that we understand Numbers. So that's why both of those books are very important.